The Anita frames is such a great die set because of all of these extra accessory dies, and you can use those, of course, independently of the pop-up. Now, for the pop-up die itself, it has the alignment nubs. You're going to just line those up over the fold of any size card. I'm using an A2 today. That means it's 4 1/4 by 5 1/2 when folded. And I'm going to use some temporary tape to hold that die in place, making sure that my alignment nubs are directly over the fold of the card. All of the major die cutting machines work great with pop-it-up dies. I'm going to use a Sizzix Big Shot today and make my sandwich for a wafer-thin die and then just send that right through the machine. A particularly great feature about this pop-up is that no paper stays in the die. As you can see, the die is just going to cut and score into the card itself. That means your die is clean and ready for the next cut. Okay, let's train this pop-up. First step, just find the center fold in both directions. So that means ignore that there's a pop-up in there, fold straight across the middle both ways. Now you can do all the training of the pop-up folds in this card folded position. And the way I like to think of it is to go from the outside in. So you go to the outside, find the cut, and where it comes down and stops, there's a score line across there. And the only thing you got to watch is that your labels never get folded. So what happens is whichever fold we're training, the labels just kind of spin through the opening and they stay nice and solid and there's no folds in them. And you can work those folds in both directions. You can see what I'm doing there, finding those folds and then returning everything to its position. Now let's find the next one in. You see it's that little bump cut there, and where those cuts stop, there's a little score line. So we want to twist the whole section across to find and pinch those little score lines. And the labels stay whole, so we can kick them one direction, and then for good measure, let's just train it in the other direction as well. But you can see that the labels themselves are staying whole and spinning as a big unit. Okay, last bit of training is the little tiny frame in the front. It has really small score lines. You don't even have to go both directions on this, just one way or the other. Find those tiny little score lines, and then everything goes back to the center. Okay, now let's return the center fold to its usual card direction. So as a regular valley fold. And then what we want to do is find the two outer box areas and bring those forward as mountains, just making sure our labels are free to move into the card and not kind of stuck in the hole where they came from. And once you get those little mountains started, you can even pinch the little outer fold there. You'll see it's now starting to come together. I think the easiest thing is actually to put my hands next to each other and just fold the card this way in my hands. And then that'll do is it'll just kind of force everything to go in the right direction. That is all there is to it. All you need to do now is just reach in, grab that little frame, and pull it out towards the center. You can even pinch and pull it while you're closing the card to make sure it comes as far out as it is able. That is it. It's such an easy fold, the Anita frames. For my backing card, I'm using Bo Bunny You're Invited paper, and I love the Harlequin pattern. So what I decided to do is use a 5 1/2 inch by 12 inch strip. And what that'll do is it'll create the backing card and leave me some leftover flaps that I can fold inside the card so that I end up with the Harlequins on both the outside of my card and the inside. When you add a pop-up card inside a backing card, the adhesive should always go on the pop-up card, and that way you can avoid all of the pop-up areas with adhesive. And that is made even easier by making sure that your pop-up card is folded up into its closed position as you add your adhesive. That way you don't have to worry about accidentally getting it into any of the pop-up areas. Now, my favorite method for actually getting it inside the card is to reveal the adhesive on just one side at a time. That way I can take the side that still has the liner on it, take my thumbs in there, make sure that the ends are right in the fold of the card, and then just being very careful that it stays straight, I can go ahead and get that on my backing card. And of course, there's really nothing that says your backing card has to be the exact same height as your pop-up card. I could have cut down my pop-up card just a little bit, or maybe made my backing card a little bit larger. That would have given me a little bit more wiggle room on the edges to not have to be so perfectly straight. But for my card today, I just decided that I wanted those to be the same height. Getting the other half on is pretty easy because I can just peel up the adhesive and fold the card against the exposed adhesive. I decided rather than cut off the extra flaps of paper to move them to the inside, I could just score the paper right next to the cardstock and fold those flaps in. And that'll do two things. Number one is the pattern from the front of the card just carries right over the edge of the card and into the inside. And the second thing is that it gives me that nice little folded edge on the sides of the card. And you certainly don't have to fold the backing card around to the inside of the card. I just thought it was kind of a cool look. It's really easy to decorate the Anita Frames pop-up using the decorator dies that come in the set. including this one. Now this one's going to cut 2 pieces on this one die that will cover the box area of the pop-up and leave a little shadow all the way around. So when you want to decorate all 4 of those areas, you just need to cut the die twice. A really great optional purchase to go with your Anita Frames die set would be the Occasions Clear Stamps number CS022. And that is because this Happy Birthday label and the 2 banners are perfectly cut out by dies that are included in the Anita Frames set. You have 3 ways to cut out this stamp using the label dies that come included in the Anita Frames. You could use the stitched label that's a little bit larger, or you can use one of the 2 smaller labels. Now these are going to look like they're very similar in size, and in fact the die size is very similar, but where the die cut line is different. You can see this one, the cut line is out towards the outside of the die. That's the one you would want to use to cut out this stamp if you want to preserve that black border that you've stamped around the Happy Birthday to You. It's very easy to see through that die to just have a little bit of the black line showing inside the die. Definitely suggest taping it down with some temporary removable tape before you run it through your die cutting machine. And this die is designed to be a little bit larger than the stamp, so you will get a little border around your black border of the original paper color. The die set also includes this nice stitched label, and this label is sized so that you line it up with the pop-up label on the inside edge. So it basically just covers it on the inside edge, making it very easy to line up. And when you do that, it'll be placed in such a position that you have a nice even shadow all the way around it. You've got the interior part of the shadow that's actually popped up, and then it continues on around the outside of the label as well. This die set really comes with everything you need to make a completed card. I'm using some strips of white cardstock on the seam between the pattern paper and the cardstock, and then for the pop-up itself I just layered more of those labels that come in the set and then used the crown, and that little die comes in the set as well. I've glittered it, added some glitter dots and some glitter lines to it. Speaking of glitter dots, Elizabeth Craft Designs sells them in a variety of color combinations, and the ones that I'm using on my card today are black and silver. And I thought it would be fun to go in and add a glitter dot at all of the points where the diamonds of the Harlequin meet each other. So now it's time to cut out a bunch of those banners. And remember, I mentioned that on the Occasions Clear Stamp set, there is 2 banner shapes that stamp solid color banners with little stitch and dots around them. And those particular banners are perfectly cut out by the 2 dies that come in the Anita Frames set. And in both cases, they will leave you that little shadow around the outside. The dies also cut the holes down into the banner so that you can easily string them onto twine. So the last decorator die in the set is the oval die, and you can see that's a nice size to fit in any of the labels, or you can use it on its own like I'm going to do today as a place to sign the card. And then as another option, if you like Halloween cards, there is a 31 stamp on the Halloween Clear Stamp set, number CS020, that can be perfectly cut out with this oval die from the Anita Frames set. And since my oval covered up 2 of my glitter dots in the Harlequin pattern, I'm just going to go ahead and add glitter dots onto the oval into those approximate positions. It'll also look a little bit like rivets through the oval. For the front of the card, I did add all of the glitter dots, and then I assembled together those 2 smaller labels. I added another one of the glittered crowns, and I used the same pattern paper on my smaller label so that I can choose a location on the front of my card where the diamonds line up. I chose a few colors out of the pattern paper to stamp all of my banners and cut them out, and then I realized that for the little string of banners that I want to put inside the card attached to the pop-up, I'd like to stamp both sides of the banner, and that way if it flips around when the card is opened, it won't be solid white on the background. But it's just for those 3, and once I've stamped those 3 banners so that they're on both sides, then I can string them onto a piece of twine. Now I can tie the banners on, there's just different ways to do it. I decided to use some small little paper clips, and I added a paper clip up on the pop-up and then one on the side of the card to attach the ends of my twine so that those banners will pop up when the card is opened. And then I just trimmed off the excess. Now for the front of the card, I also made a banner strand. Those I actually used pop dots underneath them, so those are solid in place, just used as decoration on the front of the card. My finished card is A2 sized and will mail for a single stamp.